with matters of the EU, like I said, because the European Union has said it has observed with growing concern a marked slowdown in the pace of the reform process in the Gambia over the last months, following the rejection of the draft promulgation bill 2020. The EU High Representatives and Vice President Joseph Borrell said in a statement on Monday that it is key for the 2021 presidential election to take place on the basis of a new social contract. Mr. Borrell stated that the constitutional review process is linked to other pillars of the democratic transition, such as the Truth Commission and the security sector reform. Therefore, it is important to lay the foundations for the follow-up on these processes. The European Union also calls on the Barrow-led government to take the lead in building the necessary national consensus around the future direction of the democratic transition with a new constitution as its core. And I am glad to say, joining me to discuss more on this statement and other matters is Mr. Mfamara Jaune, the Executive Director of Mbe Kanyan Organization. Mr. Jaune, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Excellent. And also, we are joined by Omar Sise of the, of course, GDC, a National Assembly member for Nyamina East. Omar, good morning and thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, good morning, all viewers, and of course, I am pleased to be here or participate as long as the platform is concerned.
Fantastic. So they are our guest this morning, so we can talk about this. So kada fe mboka ñu ngi nonu ñom ñoy suñu ya gan tay ci jotaay ji Mr. Famara Jaune mom mo jital mom mo nek li nga xamantene moy executive director mom mo jité Mbe Kanyan Organisation. Waye tamit Oumar Cissé ndek ki nga xamantene moy député ci pencum ndaw réew mi mu téwal fa GDC ak tamit Nyamina East su ko defee nañ waxtaane yi waaye tamit ak affaire yi lu mooy ndax moom surtout moom taxawaayam bi ñëpp xam nañ ko. Mr. Jaune, to start with you, of course we have just read the statement issued by the European Union yesterday, and of course it's talk about the transition, and of course they have a concern of the slow pace of the transitional process of the government, and of course this is more or less came after the rejection of the draft constitution. What did you make of the statement released by the EU?
Thank you very much. Once again, good morning, viewers. I think this is a very important statement, but ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't have reached at this stage.
Oh, really?
No, it shouldn't have reached at this stage. Now, the European Union, being one of our development partners, is reminding us of the promises that our government made to the Gambian people in 2016. So why should we wait until our development partners would come and remind us about the social contract that we have with our government?
Is it a reminder, or they're just showing or expressing their concern because they have been putting their monies in, and as the saying goes, put your mouth where your money is, and maybe because they were funding and they felt that they need to say something.
I agree as well. It could be either way. So ultimately, like they say, it goes where you put your money in is where you put your mouth.
Yeah.
So ultimately, they have the right as our development partners, but also, the world, that is a global village. The world is a global village. The Gambia is part of international bodies, and because of the world being a global village, and these are our development partners, and this is one of the commitments, one of the biggest, commitment for that matter, that the government of the Gambia made to the development partners, but to the Gambian people, that they were going to do. So if they fail to do, of course, the European Union is one of the, like I said, main donors for the Gambia government.
Now the EU, and of course, and other missions in the Gambia issued a statement prior to the vote at the National Assembly urging the members to support the bill. And now another statement. Does it, perhaps would show that they're trying to push the government or to force or maybe to dictate on what they should do or whatever?
As far as I understand, they are not pushing. They are not dictating, to speak. Now, remember the crucial role that European Union play and other development partners to ensure that the will of the Gambian people is respected and enforced.
How can you divine their actions as we speak? well before the vote of the bill, now after the rejection, yet still they are so in their position. How would you define this? Are they not trying to maybe meddle into our own affairs as others have been proclaimed, or been claiming, I should say?
For me, that is not the case. Now, when it was tough for the Gambian people, when Jammeh rejected the results in 2016, as Gambians, we called for the support of our development partners, including the EU, to intervene. And of course, they went to the Security Council of the United Nations in New York and ensured that there is a resolution to ensure that the will of the Gambian people is respected. And after that, after we've seen the numerous supports that the European Union has been providing through various UN agencies as well, people have to understand. You hear some people say that, okay, EU didn't put much money in the constitutional review process here and there, but you have to understand that the European member states of the European Union are also parts and parcel of the United Nations. And various UN agencies, including the UNDP, have been very supportive in this transition period.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Now I'll come to Umar Sise, who is a National Assembly member. Of course, we all know what happened, but he's somebody who supported the draft. It's good to say that. Now, Omar, what did you make of all this? He said we should not have got to this level. But of course, many are blaming the National Assembly members, some of their position. I know, like I said, you supported, but what did you make of this whole situation?
Well, first, I will say it is not in any way the EU or other development partners trying to dictate the government of the Gambia. Like he said, I totally concur with him that we could have averted some of these things or some of these happenings, because considering the fact that we have spent so much money, considering the fact that we have spent so much energy in order to develop, in order to formulate a new draft constitution. This was set up not just from the group that was set up called the CRC, but it is from the ideas, from the beliefs, from the opinion of the Gambian people. So I believe the National Assembly members, of course, my colleagues, I mean, they could have give chance to this draft constitution so that we could have get to the next stage. You have a concern, I have a concern. Every individual in this country, one can say, you have a particular concern that is not just captured in that draft constitution. As a result, there is a room created. Your concern and my concern where some of these things can be addressed. But if you refuse to give room to that dialogue to take place, that's where the challenge is. And I believe that this is what some of the National Assembly members fail to understand. Because I have some of them saying, what is my guarantee if my concern is not addressed at that level? But it's a dialogue. The CRC members will defend whatsoever that they wrote as long as the draft is concerned. So giving chance to the draft constitution to pass the second reading of the National Assembly would have created room for dialogue. But people saying the EU, they are trying to dictate. No, of course, they are just trying to remind the government. And I think something that I should have done, you went around the entire country.
But the government the government also have said they are still committed to the transitional process.
But still now, they cannot indicate to the Gambian people what other step are they going to take as long as the draft is concerned. You and I, we are yet to know this. And knowing fully, the government, I will tell you this, they were very committed to have this bill rejected. This I can tell you. Because they have already made up their minds, they have already have their agreement and all those stuff. So knowing fully that they are going to reject this draft constitution, they could have plans ahead before the rejection.
Talking about, not knowing what would happen next, of course, these are processes as you may know, but then, of course, yesterday the Justice Minister was on the papers and he was saying, they are open to engagement and they're going to, engage stakeholders in this process, and, the process would continue. And to see if there's any way that they can reconsider the draft or the constitution again. So I think there's possibility. Don't you think so?
I agree. The possibility is there for them to come back. But are you considering the time? Because the purpose of this draft constitution was, at least before the next election, presidential election, I mean 2021, we wanted to have this reform done and completed, so that this will better define the way and the manner in which we are going to conduct our next election and how we are going to operate as long as the next government is concerned. But what guarantee do you have? Do you think this process will be able to complete before the next presidential election? It is not possible, in my own view, because I hold the view that if maybe they want to amend some of the provisions, piecemeal amendment, maybe we can achieve some of these things. But to bring the draft entirely for us to get into the referendum stage I'm not seeing the possibility from now against the next presidential election.
All right, Mr. John, what did you make of that? Do you think there's a way out? Moving forward, as he's saying, the justice minister is talking about reconsideration and all that. What do you think could be the way forward? Are we on the right track to get another constitution, a new constitution to usher in a third republic, probably, or maybe to lead us to the elections? What do you think?
I think it's possible. I think it is very, very possible.
How possible?
I believe that the government and the National Assembly have a greater role to play here.
Okay.
Now, I know it's about processes, but they could amend the CRC Act. They could also go back to the 1997 Constitution, where the issue of referendum and the issue of constitutional amendments and other things were mentioned, and amend those parts if possible, so as the period that it takes, to gazette it and do all those things, for instance, because it took, a while, like Honorable says. So if there is any possibility for them to amend those parts of the law so that we can have it done within a short period of time. Otherwise, I am afraid, like he said, we might not, and that's going to be very serious because the government promised the Gambian people of ushering in third republic.
Yes. And that's seemingly not possible as of now.
It's left to them, the technocrats and the Ministry of Justice and the National Assembly and the government as a whole. They have to go and look at our law books and make sure that we have this done, because that's the demand.
I know Mr. Cisse is itching to say something, but should, in case all that we are talking could not possible, and we have gone to the elections, courtesy of the 1997 Constitution, would that be a failure?
No, that's going to be very catastrophic for this country. We cannot go into 1990, we cannot go to the 2021 presidential elections without two things: having a new constitution, or amend the provisions of the 1997 Constitution that will, meet up with the expectations and aspirations of the Gambian people. So we must do something.
Okay, Omar, yes, you want to...
Well, I was just trying to put across, you don't amend a particular law to address a particular situation. That's not how laws are amended. I am not a legal expert.
Well, Honorable, you did a lot of that in the past.
Yes. I'm not a legal expert, obviously, but this I do understand. Like,
that.
Some of these provisions one is talking about, they are entering clauses of the Constitution. And
which clauses, let us be specific here. Which are these clauses exactly are we talking about? So that those watching would know the entrenched clauses that we are talking about. Can you tell us what they are and what
exactly now, for instance, if you talk of the issue of referendum, this is about the Gambian people deciding.
Yes.
Now, for instance, if you want to avoid some of this process, as long as the draft is concerned, you must go back to the Gambian people to decide.
No, one of the main concerns Gambians have is about, let's say, the 50%, going to the election. That's a concern, and also I forgot the other one, but I think this has been the main one.
And the time limit, of course.
The time limit, of course, yeah.
Yes.
But then I think this can be amendable.
This is what exactly I am talking about. Now, for instance, having this amended, maybe you cannot amend electoral law 9 months before election. This is practically impossible. That is what the law is dictating. So obviously, that is why I am telling you the possibility is very narrow for us to have some of this amendment if we don't fast track things before we get to the next presidential election. Because if you do, then you are trying to amend that provision or clause of the Constitution to suit a particular situation.
Okay, I'll come back to you. But yesterday I spoke to the EU ambassador, Attila Laios, and of course he seems to be optimistic despite the concerns they have raised. Let's listen to him.
I do not see the government failing to carry on with the changes. So I don't believe that we are at a stage like that, and the transition is not failing. I do believe what is important to underline that there is still 1.5 years ahead of the Gambia till the next presidential election. So it is keenly important that the time is used most efficiently to make sure that the interlinked, interconnected pillars of the transitional justice will all lead to the ambitious objectives.
All right, that's the EU ambassador there speaking. He's still, he didn't see a failure as of now. And do you think, I mean, the government really did not fail to its, responsibilities and promises to the Gambian people in regards to the transitional process and all that?
Well, obviously, like I said, having a new constitution it was one of the, the promises.
Yeah.
It's one of the promises, sorry, that the new government made to the Gambian people in 2016. So obviously, if they fail to usher in a new republic through having a new constitution, they would fail the Gambian people. So obviously, the honor now lies on the Gambian government.
Yeah, but the EU ambassador who have been putting their money are saying there's still hope.
I agree. Entirely, I agree.
It's not failed.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That's why I said it's left to the government. They have time. Like the honorable mentioned 9 months or so. We still have more than 9 months,
Yeah.
So it's left to the government to fast track the process. They know the procedures. Let them start something and
do you think there's the
to
political
Gambian
will
people.
from the higher level, I should say?
Well, before, if there were a political will, we don't have reached where we are today. Yes.
Okay.
We don't have reached where we are today.
So there's a lack of, commitment into the process.
Entirely. Because you know what? When the CRC Act was brought into Parliament, we are all happy. Because it was brought in by the government. And, CRC was established, they were given enough resources, by the government, of course, through the National Assembly to carry out the work. So we are all happy. But when the draft came, especially the final draft, people weren't sure whether the executive, they were going to tamper with it or not. People were not sure. But again, when we came to the final, vote or whatsoever, we saw what happened. We saw what happened. The honorable minister didn't do justice to the work as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
He could have done better.
He could have done better. Honorable knows that. Of course. This bill is a government bill. So government should make sure they defend it and convince the honorable members.
Very well.
Anyone who wasn't sure whether they could vote for it or not should have been convinced by the honorable minister. If there was no conspiracy theory prior to that, like honorable said.
Wow. It seems Mr. Sis is agreeing to what you were saying. He said, it seems, what did you make of that? You too felt the justice minister or the honorable did not do justice to what?
Very well. I totally concur. In fact, I could remember when upon the debate when the justice minister was responding some of the concerns raised by honorable members, because we had some of the honorable members raising concern and saying, my position can only be determined when I am convinced by the honorable minister. That is the justice minister.
Yes.
But the justice minister was not in any way trying to defend the document that was given to him from the government. And the justice minister was just picking some of the issues and giving answers to those that were not actually satisfied in front of the general
But don't you think also, like he said, at some point
members.
he was not at the right position to respond to some of the concern or queries that were raised by some of the members? It was up to the CRC members to be given the chance and come and explain, but that never happened.
Well, the point here is, if the justice minister, the document was there almost 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months before the document was tabled before the National Assembly.
Yeah.
My opinion is the justice minister should have go through the document thoroughly, make thorough consultation and further research about the document as to how he is going to defend that document in the National Assembly, because he knows very well that issues must come, pertinent issues must come, and he is there to answer some of these issues adequately. And the other point is, looking at the whole scenario now, if we are to review the constitution entirely, for instance, do we have the time to go and consult the Gambian people?
I was going to ask you just finally on this matter. I mean, what do you think is the possibilities to get us out from this situation we are? I mean, we are talking about amendment, we are talking about consideration again, going back to the processes. I mean, what is the likely possibility here in this case as a National Assembly member? What do you think could be possible to get the Gambians their wishes and aspirations in this case?
Very well. The possibility is still there. The room is still there.
What is it then?
Yes, exactly. Now that we had the Justice Minister saying they are going to set an independent body out there that will go over the Constitution and review the Constitution. Yes, that is a possibility, because there is nothing restricting the executive.
But you know what? We talked about the timeline. One of the main concerns that many believe that have contributed to its rejection is because of the timeline. I mean,
of course.
I mean, some of the members who rejected, they said the retroactive, provision. Provision should not be there. And it seems if there is any chance it to be brought back to the National Assembly
but now
again, that
what
would
would be the tendency of the constitution being passed again? Because most of my colleagues do argue that the current term of the president must not be inclusive.
Yeah.
So those who agree, the other National Assembly members, of course, we are 31 in number,
Yeah.
they are 23 in number. What will be my position
So
if
now,
the CRC,
do you
for
think,
instance, should go again and change that
just
provision?
fine. Do you think if that did not change in the draft, would it have chance to go through?
The possibility I can still tell you and I will indicate to you is very narrow still. Because others will still not agree to that.
Okay.
Because it's not from you and I. It's from the Gambian people.
Okay.
And my people agree to this. And others who voted yes, their people also agree to this.
Mr. Jan,
so what is the possibility?
Thank you. Mr. Jan, what do you think? Would it be wise to give it a chance? Like, this is an issue. Let's discuss it. Probably let's redefine it, let's refrain it and whatsoever, and then see what's possible and then move on. Or is it that they have, this has to be in the draft, come what may, and then, see what happens? What do you think could be the possibility here?
First, I start before coming to the possibility, I start with CRC report. Now, they made it very clear that the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people, majority of the Gambian people, do not want to be ruled by one person more than 10 years.
Yeah.
That's what CRC is telling us.
Yeah.
So if
And I think even the president is committed to that.
Well, that's something else. But if we are really going to reconsider or probably said, let's remove the president's current term from the whole thing, then that means now we are giving room for the current president to serve up to 15 years, which majority of the Gambians are against.
Yeah.
So for me right now, what is at stake? We need a national dialogue. We need a compromise. We need to engage with everyone and put Gambia first.
In the compromise, don't you think that could be an issue then?
It depends on the Gambian people. And the majority of the Gambian people per se.
Yeah, but at the end, it all depends to the people that would determine. And if it gets to the National Assembly, we saw what happened.
Well, that's why I said we need a compromise.
Okay.
We need a compromise as Gambians.
All right.
But we cannot afford to miss this opportunity. Because we are not transitioning. We are stuck at one place.
Okay.
So we need to move.
We got to leave it at that. And that's